All right, guys, welcome to Bert's Basics. My name is Peter Burt. I teach at Box Elder High School, and I'm glad you could come join us today. So let's get this party started. So today we are doing digestive system, and we're focusing on salivary glands and our teeth. So let's see how well that goes. So here's our goal. This is a state core objective. It says describe the functions of salivary and salivary amylase. So amylase is a word we're definitely going to have to master. And we need to know the anatomy of a tooth. So we're going to take a tooth. We're going to cut it in half, and we're going to start labeling every part of a tooth. So let's start with our salivary glands. Okay, little known fact, not a lot of people know this. Humans, we have 6 salivary glands. We have 3 on each side, or 3 pairs. I love, love, love these two. And if you've taken midterm, this one makes sense too, but let's start with the easier ones. We have this little one underneath our tongue. So underneath our tongue, we call it sublingual. Sub means below, like a submarine. And what happens if you speak 2 languages? If I speak 2 languages, then we call that being bilingual. So sublingual is just a fancy name for 2 tongues, right? Or that's what bilingual means. We want sublingual. So this right here is my sublingual gland. That's underneath the tongue. This one is underneath my mandible. Do you see how that's your mandible right there? So this is your submandibular. Now the hardest one, and the one I'm going to test you on the most, because this is the one that we don't know the best, is your parotid. So here's your parotid. Now par means next to, and oto means ear. So this is right next to your ear. My kids in class, they like to think of this as parotid next to your carotid. So if you guys are actually like checking your pulse, you know your carotid's right here. Your parotid is next to your carotid. And for some reason that helps them memorize it, okay? Now, why do I even care about salivary glands? Well, I care about them for a couple of reasons. Number one, they produce saliva, which helps lubricate my food. So let's do blue. Okay, when you guys are ingesting food and you're mechanically breaking down, the saliva will help it a lot easier to swallow. So the saliva is good. Okay, it adds moisture to the food. It keeps my mouth from getting dry. But the biggest thing I want in there is these guys. And I'm going to switch to my color green. In your saliva, you have these guys. Okay, now if we watch the first video, you guys already recognize this. Whenever you see ASE, ASE is an enzyme. Now, they have a couple of enzymes they secrete, and they're not all the same. So like parotid secretes a percentage of enzyme versus mucus, and some are a little bit different. So the more you study these, each one's kind of unique. But there's only one enzyme I want you guys to know in this unit. And the only enzyme we're going to talk about is this guy. And his name is amylase. Now, you know it's an enzyme because it ends in ACE. Okay, everyone's feeling pretty confident about that. Amylase ends in ACE. So now the question is, why do I care about them? Well, if you guys understand back from chapter 3, this is an enzyme. An enzyme has a spot where a substrate will fall in. If you don't like the word substrate, think of a reactant as far as like chemistry goes. It's what you're going to start with. And it's highly, highly, highly specific. There's only one guy who can fall inside amylase, and that is amylose. Now, amylose is a sugar because it ends in ose. Now, you're like, man, I've never heard of amylose before. I think you actually have. It's just no one ever calls them amylose. Amylose's common name is starch. So I am telling you, starch begins to be chemically digested in the mouth with salivary amylase. So what happens is amylose falls in here, it gets broken down and broken into smaller sugars when it leaves. Okay, amylose, in case you're curious, is a polysaccharide. If you remember poly, that's a sugar that is the size of Texas. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to destroy these guys. So whenever you guys hear salivary glands, these are accessories. Okay, I spelled it wrong last time. I'm not spelling it wrong this time. 2 C's, 2 S's, they're accessory organs. Food does not go in them, but they help the digestive tract. So make sure you guys understand you have your parotid, your submandibular, and your sublingual, adding what we call salivary amylase to your food. Now I get to give you a new word. You guys ready for your new word? So now I've got a ball of food. You like sound effects? I've now mechanically chewed it with my teeth. I've now added amylase to it. We can't call this food anymore. It's got enzymes mixed in it. So in the world of anatomy, when we have chewed up food with salivary juices in it, we now call it a bolus. Okay, that is a bolus. You swallow a bolus. There's a bolus in your pharynx. There's a bolus in your esophagus. We're going to change food's name a lot. Eventually, food will come to feces. But right now, we're going to have bolus, okay? So that is my salivary glands. Now, every once in a while, okay, there is a viral infection of the salivary glands. And what will happen is the virus will get in these salivary glands and it will make them swell. So once they swell, they become really large and it's pretty easy to notice. Okay, look at this kid before and after. Okay, do you guys recognize this? This is the almighty mumps. You've probably heard of mumps before. Do you see mumps right here? Mumps is a viral infection that affects glands, and especially is noticeable in salivary glands. So it makes your salivary glands swell. Now, you might not think this is a big deal. It comes with a fever and lots of other symptoms, but the only one that we tend to worry about is in rare cases, it actually can lead to men being sterile after. Now, that's kind of a big deal. Now, if you're 60 years old and get mumps, maybe that's not a big deal. But if you're 10 and you get mumps, that can be a big deal. So mumps is inflamed salivary glands. All right, teeth time. I love teeth. I love teeth. So what we need to do is we need to master teeth together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tooth, I'm going to cut it in half. Now, we're not going to go too much into depth in the video about like incisors, cuspids, bicuspids, and molars, which in class I actually will. But I do need to know some of the basics. So let's go through some of the basics, okay? As adults, okay, humans have 32 permanent teeth, okay? On average, obviously. Most people that are listening to this video will have 28. Why will most people have 28? Well, because they got their 4 wisdom teeth removed, okay? On average, you should have 32 permanent teeth. Babies have 20 deciduous teeth, okay? Deciduous might be a word you're not as familiar with. That's an S on the end, sorry, okay? Deciduous, okay? You know deciduous because you hate these deciduous trees, okay? A deciduous tree, let's switch to green, okay? A deciduous tree is the one where their leaves will fall off, okay? That's why they call them deciduous trees, and those are the ones you have to rake when you're in the summertime. Decidu means falling off. So baby teeth are called deciduous teeth because they fall out like deciduous trees, okay? So that kind of will help you remember that as we go. So just make sure you guys know we have 32 permanent teeth and 20 deciduous teeth. But most of our questions are going to be on the actual tooth himself. So let's go to the tooth himself. Let's start with the outside of the tooth. Whenever we look at a tooth, there's going to be 3 parts. The part of the tooth you can see, okay? The part of the tooth that is aligned with the gums, and we'll give gums its real meaning in a second. You know what? Screw it. Let's give gums its real name right now. The gums, scientific name is gingiva. Now that should be fairly common for you because if this is an ouch or an inflammation, now we have gingivitis, okay? And then we have the part of the tooth that is embedded down into the bone, okay? Those are the 3 parts of the teeth. So let's give them names. The part of the tooth that you can physically see is called the crown. So if you've ever had a crown done, that means they put a cap on your tooth. Where the crown and the gums meet together is called the neck. Okay, the neck is kind of hard to distinguish from the gums. It's usually going to be a bracket because it's a region, okay? Now, this should also be familiar. The part of the tooth that's embedded into the bone is called the root. So we have 3 parts of your tooth. We have the crown, the neck, and the root. Whoops, oh dear, what just happened? Let me just pause that and go back to where I was, sorry. All right, sorry, I kind of moved everything around on my screen, but I think I got everything back to normal now, so I think we're good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take apart the tooth piece by piece, and to do this, I'm going to switch colors to green, okay? So when we look at the crown, you can see there's actually quite a few things in the crown, because if I could draw, let's go back to red really quick. Let's get my pen out. There we go. This is my crown. It's the physical part of the tooth that's above the gum. So you can see there's quite a bit in there, okay? So what I want to do is I want to focus on what are those parts and what are they doing in there. So here we go. So the first part I want to do is the part that all of you know, okay? You know this really well, okay? You've studied this before. The white part of the tooth, okay, the white part of the tooth, let me get my pen back out. Oh, I want green. Give me green. Give me green. Thank you. The white part of your tooth is something that everyone knows, and it's called enamel. Okay, enamel is a really hard substance. It's bone-like. Okay, this is not bone. It's not bone, and I'll show you why in just a second. It's a calcium carbonate, calcium phosphate. There's different things in here, but this is enamel. Underneath the enamel, I have another layer, okay? I don't know where my mouse went. This is getting hard. The underneath layer is called the dentin. Okay, maybe I'll try to write it out here so you can see it better. Dentin. The dentin is the yellow part of the tooth. In the dentin, this is the major part of the tooth where you actually have all your kind of different kind of cells. So in here, I have different cells that will help make the enamel. Okay, so if I want to show you the coolest picture in the world, I got this from a dental site. This is enamel. Now, what I read about enamel is it's generally a yellow-brown color, so to get white enamel is actually fairly difficult. So when you bleach your teeth, you're kind of bleaching all these empty spaces found within the enamel. But there is definitely a division here. Can you see this division here? And then this is a different material. This right here is my dentin. The dentin is a little bit softer than enamel. Okay, this is where all the cells were that made the enamel, right? So then what do we call it if you go to the dentist and you have one of these? You have a crack or a weakening spot in the enamel. Well, if we call that, then we call that a cavity, right? So if your doctor says or a dentist says you have a cavity, that means you have a crack or a hole or a weakening spot in your enamel, okay? And if you take dental school classes, they call it a carie, okay? So that is a enamel versus dentin. Now I've got my enamel, I've got my dentin, I gotta get to here. This cavity is where you have a lot of blood vessels and a lot of nerves. Can you see how there's all these lines in here? So the best word, I hate this word, it's my least favorite word on the planet. This is called the pulp cavity. Now, I hate pulp and orange juice with all my fiber and being. Remember, pulp is a squishy, fleshy part of a fruit. So in this case, pulp now is a squishy, fleshy part of a tooth. That's where all your blood and nerves are. I have the coolest picture of pulp you've ever seen. Check that out. That is amazing. So this is your crown, right? They cut it all off. This right here is your pulp. It's a fleshy part what's inside your tooth that has all your nerves and blood vessels. I wish I could like cut that open and like play the nerves and blood vessels like guitar, ding, 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 and kind of do that. In case you're curious, they are putting on a crown. That's what this surgery was that I took this picture of. So they're going to put some resin here to help glue it together, and then they're going to put on a cap once this is clean to make sure that they got this protected. So this is my pulp. So let's go through the main parts of the tooth that you need to know. Okay, so you need to know, can I clear this off? It's a little busy for me. You need to know enamel, which is the hardest part of the tooth. You need to know the dentin layer, which is underneath the enamel. And then you need to know the pulp, which is where all the fleshy part is. Oops, pulp, okay? Now the thing is, there's gotta be a spot for this to come up, right? Where all the blood vessels come up. So the spot where all this comes up, can you see it's like a cute little straw? We call that the canal. Now check it out, the canal is in the root. So guess what happens if you have a surgery on this? Then you have a root canal. That means your tooth is dying or dead. Okay, they're not pleasant to have. Okay, there's a couple more things we need to know besides enamel, dentin, pulp, and canal. You guys got to remember, this is going to be stuck in bone. So can I do a different color for bone? Let's do yellow for bone. Okay, this is all bone over here. Okay, so if that's all bone over here, I have to be able to somehow anchor to the bone. And to do this, there's actually a special ligament. Now, I hate the word ligament. I know this, but this is what they're going to say in all your classes. Ligaments connect bone to bone, but this is a tooth to bone, which is not the same thing. Okay, the reason why is because enamel's avascular. There's no blood here, so if you chip it, it won't grow back. That's why enamel's not bone. But I understand why they call it a ligament, because this is bone-like. So what happens is there's a ligament that goes around the tooth to anchor it into the bone. Now notice I said around the tooth. Around the tooth. Odont is tooth and peri is around. So we call this the periodontal ligament. The periodontal ligament holds the tooth into the bone. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I gotta go a little faster. But if you guys have some gum problems, okay, that is called gingivitis because the gums are inflamed. If the periodontal is inflamed, then your teeth literally fall out, okay? Because your periodontal is what anchors it into the bone, right? So that's your periodontal. So congratulations, you have now finished a tooth. So do me a favor. This will be your quiz on the tooth. See if you can knock all these guys out. The answers are going to appear in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, there's your answers. All right, guys, thanks for watching Bert's Basics. I'll see you on the flip side.